The courtroom felt like ice against my skin. I sat perfectly still in the wooden chair, my hands folded in my lap, watching everyone around me like I was watching a movie. But this wasn't a movie. This was my life falling apart, and somehow I was the only one who wasn't panicking. "She only wants money," my mother Helen whispered from the seat behind me. Her voice was sharp and angry, like a knife cutting through butter. She was talking about me, but she was wrong. Money was the last thing on my mind right now. Across the room, Vanessa leaned forward in her chair. Her blonde hair was perfect, like always. Her gym clothes were expensive, like always. She looked at Michael and smiled, that mean smile I had seen so many times before. "She's desperate," she added, loud enough for everyone to hear. Michael laughed. Actually laughed. The sound made my stomach twist into knots. This was the man I had loved for 5 years, married for 3. The man who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. The man who once told me my paintings were beautiful, even when they looked like a child had made them. "Let's end this fast," he said, still chuckling. His expensive suit made him look important, but I knew the truth about where that money came from. His lawyer, James Foster, nodded and shuffled through his papers like he was bored. I reached into my purse and pulled out a white envelope. It was thin, but it felt heavy in my hands, heavier than anything I had ever carried. I had been holding onto this envelope for weeks, waiting for this exact moment. Judge Patricia Wells looked tired. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but right now those eyes looked serious. She had been listening to Michael's lawyer talk for 20 minutes about how I was a failed artist who couldn't support myself, about how I was trying to steal Michael's family money, about how I was just a gold digger who married him for his wealth. None of it was true, but I let them talk. I let them think they were winning. "Your Honor," I said quietly, standing up. My voice sounded strange in the big room. "I have something for you." Michael stopped laughing. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Even my mother looked surprised. I walked to the front of the courtroom, my shoes clicking on the floor. Each step felt like it took forever. The envelope in my hand felt like it was burning, but I kept walking. Judge Wells looked at me with curious eyes. "What is this, Mrs. Morrison?" "Evidence," I said simply, handing her the envelope. "Evidence that changes everything." Michael's lawyer jumped up from his chair. "Your Honor, we weren't told about any new evidence. This is highly irregular." "Sit down, Mr. Foster," Judge Wells said, without looking at him. She was already opening my envelope. The courtroom went completely quiet. I could hear my heart beating in my chest. I could hear my mother breathing behind me. I could hear Vanessa's chair creaking as she leaned forward to try to see what was in the envelope. Judge Wells pulled out the papers inside. There were photographs, bank statements, emails, and phone records. Everything I had been collecting for 2 months. Everything that would destroy Michael's perfect life, just like he had tried to destroy mine. She read quietly for what felt like hours, but was probably only 2 minutes. Her face didn't change at first. She just read, turning page after page. Then, slowly, a strange smile appeared on her lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile you get when you finally understand a puzzle that has been confusing you for a long time. "Oh," she said, looking up at Michael. Her voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in it. "This changes things." Michael's face went white. Vanessa grabbed his arm, her fingernails digging into his expensive suit jacket. James Foster looked confused, like someone had just told him the sky was green instead of blue. Their laughter stopped. All of it. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. But me? I didn't need to start laughing. I had been waiting for this moment for so long that I felt calm instead of happy. I felt peaceful instead of excited. I had been playing a game that they didn't even know they were playing, and now it was time to show them the rules. Michael tried to speak, but no words came out. Vanessa's perfect face looked scared for the first time since I had known her. My mother was staring at me like she had never seen me before. Judge Wells set the papers down on her desk and looked directly at Michael. "Mr. Morrison," she said slowly, "I think we need to have a very different conversation than the one your lawyer prepared for today." I walked back to my seat and sat down. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart wasn't racing anymore. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The game was about to begin, and this time I was the one holding all the cards. 3 months earlier, my life looked perfect from the outside. At least, that's what everyone told me. Michael and I lived in a beautiful apartment with tall windows that let in lots of sunlight. The kind of apartment I used to dream about when I was little and living in my mother's tiny house. Every morning, Michael would wake up at 6 o'clock sharp. He would put on his expensive suits and tie his silk ties. He worked at Sterling Marketing, one of the biggest companies in the city. Important people called him all day long. He made more money in 1 month than I made in 6 months at the coffee shop. I would wake up an hour later and put on my simple clothes. Jeans and a t-shirt, usually with paint stains that never came out no matter how hard I scrubbed. I worked at Sunrise Coffee Shop downtown, making drinks for busy people who barely looked at me when they ordered. "Have a good day, honey," Michael would say every morning, kissing my cheek before he left, but his kisses felt cold, like kissing a statue. They used to feel warm and real, but something had changed over the past few months. After work, I would come home and paint in our spare bedroom. I had turned it into my art studio, with canvases everywhere and brushes soaking in jars of water. Michael used to love watching me paint. He would sit on the old chair in the corner and ask me about the colors I chose and what the paintings meant. But lately, he stopped coming into my studio. When I showed him my new paintings, he would glance at them quickly and say, "That's nice, Anna," without really looking. Then he would go to his computer and work until late at night. "You're working so much," I told him one evening as he typed on his laptop. We were sitting on our expensive couch that his mother had bought us for our wedding. "Maybe we could watch a movie together?" "I have to finish this project," he said without looking up. "The Peterson account is very important. You wouldn't understand." That hurt. He used to explain his work to me, even though I didn't always understand business things. He used to care about helping me understand. Money became a problem between us, not because we didn't have enough, but because Michael started acting strange about it. He would check our bank account every day and ask me questions about every dollar I spent. "Why did you buy expensive coffee beans?" he asked one day, holding up the receipt from the grocery store. "They were only $3 more than the cheap ones," I said. "I thought we could try something nice." $3 here, $5 there," he said, shaking his head. "It adds up, Anna. You need to think about these things." But the same week, he bought a new watch that cost more than I made in 2 months. When I asked him about it, he said it was an investment and important for work. His family made everything worse. Michael's parents had always been polite to me, but they never really liked me. They thought Michael should have married someone with a college degree and a real career. Someone who came from money, like they did. "How's the little coffee shop?" his mother would ask when we visited, saying little like it was something dirty. "It's good," I would answer. "I'm learning a lot about business." She would smile, that fake smile rich people use when they think you're stupid. "That's sweet, dear." Michael never defended me. He would just sit there and let his family treat me like I was a child playing dress-up in grown-up clothes. The worst part was how he started staying out late. At first, it was just 1 night a week. "Client dinner," he would say, grabbing his coat. "Don't wait up." Then it became 2 nights a week. Then 3. He would come home after midnight, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked him about it, he said the restaurant must have had strong air fresheners. I tried to make our marriage work. I cooked his favorite meals and left little notes in his briefcase. I bought new clothes with money I saved from my coffee shop tips. I even signed up for a business class at the community college, thinking maybe if I understood his world better, we could connect again. But nothing worked. Michael grew more distant every day. He stopped saying, "I love you," when he left for work. He stopped asking about my paintings. He stopped touching me when we watched TV together. Some nights, I would lie in bed next to him and feel like I was sleeping next to a stranger. He would turn away from me and fall asleep quickly while I stared at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong. My mother, Helen, noticed the change when she visited for dinner one Sunday. "He's different," she whispered to me while Michael was in the bathroom. Colder. "What's going on, Anna?" "Nothing," I lied. "He's just stressed about work." But I knew it was more than work stress. I could feel him slipping away from me like water through my fingers. I just didn't know why, and I didn't know how to stop it. I thought if I tried harder, if I was a better wife, if I complained less about money, maybe things would go back to how they used to be. I had no idea that Michael had already decided our marriage was over. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning in the most ordinary way possible. Michael had rushed out of the apartment, late for an important meeting. In his hurry, he left his phone charging on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. I was washing dishes when the phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again and again. At first, I ignored it. Michael got work messages all the time, but the buzzing wouldn't stop. After the 10th buzz in 2 minutes, I glanced at the screen, thinking maybe it was an emergency. The messages weren't from work. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Same place as always. I miss your hands on my body. Your wife doesn't deserve you. You know that, right?" My hands started shaking. The coffee mug I was holding slipped and crashed to the floor, breaking into 100 pieces, but I barely heard the sound. All I could see were those words on Michael's phone screen. The messages were from someone named Vanessa. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers and scrolled up to see more messages. There were hundreds of them, going back months, pictures that made my stomach sick, words that made my heart feel like it was being ripped apart. "Meet me at the gym after your wife goes to work. I love how you make me feel like a real woman, not like some desperate housewife. When are you going to leave her? I'm getting tired of hiding." I sat down on the kitchen floor, surrounded by broken pieces of the coffee mug, and read every single message. Each one felt like a knife cutting deeper into my chest. Michael had been lying to me for 8 months. Every client dinner was a date with Vanessa. Every work meeting was time spent with her. Every night he came home late, he had been with another woman. The worst part was reading what they said about me. "She's so pathetic," Vanessa had written. "Always trying so hard to make you happy. Doesn't she realize you're done with her?" "She has no idea," Michael had replied. "She thinks if she cooks my favorite dinner and leaves cute notes, everything will be fine. It's actually sad. Poor little artist girl, living in a fantasy world." They were laughing at me. While I was trying to save our marriage, they were making fun of my efforts behind my back. I heard Michael's key in the door and quickly put his phone back where I found it. I swept up the broken mug pieces and threw them away, cutting my finger on a sharp edge. Blood dripped into the trash can, but I didn't care. "Hey," Michael said, walking into the kitchen. "Did I leave my phone here?" "Yes," I said, not looking at him. "On the counter." He grabbed it and checked his messages. I watched his face as he read Vanessa's texts. He smiled. Actually smiled while reading messages from the woman he was cheating on me with. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing the bandage on my finger. "Just broke a mug," I said. "Clumsy me." "You should be more careful," he said, already walking toward the door. "I have to go. Another long day." Another day with her, I thought, but I just nodded and said, "Have a good day." After he left, I sat on our couch and cried until my eyes were red and swollen. Then I got angry. Then I cried some more. I called in sick to work and spent the day thinking. Part of me wanted to confront Michael immediately. Part of me wanted to pack my bags and leave, but something inside me said to wait, to watch, to learn more before I did anything. So I started paying attention to things I had ignored before. I noticed that Michael showered as soon as he came home from his work meetings. I noticed that he hid his phone when I walked into the room. I noticed that he bought new cologne and started working out more. 3 days later, I was supposed to work a double shift at the coffee shop, but my coworker got sick and I came home early. I climbed the stairs to our apartment quietly, planning to surprise Michael with his favorite takeout dinner. But I was the one who got surprised. I heard voices coming from our bedroom. Michael's voice and a woman's voice I didn't recognize. They were laughing about something. I crept closer to the bedroom door, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. "She actually bought me flowers yesterday," Michael was saying, like that would fix everything. "Poor thing," the woman said. "She really has no clue, does she?" "None at all. She thinks we're just going through a rough patch. She has no idea I've been planning to divorce her for months." Divorce. The word hit me like a truck. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to leave me. "When are you going to tell her?" the woman asked. "Soon," Michael said. "My lawyer is working on the papers. I want to make sure I get everything I deserve." The apartment, half her inheritance from her grandmother, even some of her paintings. They might be worth something someday. You're so smart, baby. She'll never see it coming. I backed away from the door slowly, grabbed my purse, and left the apartment as quietly as I had entered. I walked around the city for 3 hours, thinking about what I had heard. Michael wasn't just cheating on me, he was planning to destroy my life and take everything I had. But he was wrong about one thing. I did see it coming. Now I just had to decide what to do about it. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a man in a cheap suit who looked bored with his job. I signed for the thick envelope while Michael watched from the kitchen table, eating his breakfast like nothing unusual was happening. "What's that?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Just some legal documents," Michael said, not meeting my eyes. "Nothing to worry about." I waited until he left for work before opening the envelope. My hands were steady now. After weeks of watching and waiting, I had prepared myself for this moment. The papers were thick and full of legal words I didn't understand, but the main points were clear enough. Michael wanted half of everything I owned, half of the small inheritance my grandmother had left me, half of my art collection, including paintings I had made before we even met, half of the money in our joint savings account, which was mostly money I had saved from my coffee shop job. But the worst part was what his lawyer had written about me. The defendant has shown no ability to support herself financially and has been dependent on the plaintiff throughout their marriage. The defendant's art career has produced no significant income and shows no promise of future success. They were calling me a failure. In legal language, but still calling me a failure. My phone rang an hour later. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Morrison?" "This is James Foster, your husband's attorney. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss the divorce proceedings." His voice was smooth and confident, like he had done this 1,000 times before, which he probably had. "I don't have a lawyer," I said. "That's perfectly fine. Many people choose to represent themselves in simple cases like this. We can make this very easy for you. Your husband is being quite generous with his offer." Generous, like he was doing me a favor by taking half of everything I owned. "What kind of meeting?" I asked. "Just a simple discussion of terms. Your husband wants to keep this friendly and quick. No need for a long, expensive court battle that would hurt both of you." I agreed to meet him the next day at his office downtown. After I hung up, I called my mother. "They served you papers?" Helen's voice was sharp with anger. That snake. I knew he was up to something. "He wants half of everything, Mom. Even Grandma's inheritance." "Over my dead body," she said. "Anna, you need to fight this. You need to get your own lawyer." "I can't afford a lawyer like his," I said. "James Foster probably costs more per hour than I make in a week. Then we'll find someone else, someone who will work with us." But I had already made up my mind about something else, something my mother didn't know about yet. The next day, I sat in James Foster's fancy office, surrounded by expensive furniture and law books. He was exactly what I expected. Silver hair, expensive suit, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming. I know this is difficult, but we can make it simple." He spread the papers across his desk like he was dealing cards. "Your husband is asking for very reasonable terms. A 50-50 split of all marital assets. He's even willing to let you keep the apartment for 6 months while you find somewhere else to live." "What about my paintings?" I asked. "Art created during the marriage is considered marital property, but your husband is willing to let you keep the smaller pieces. He only wants the larger canvases that might have commercial value. The paintings he wanted were my best work, the ones I was most proud of, the ones that meant the most to me. And my grandmother's inheritance? That money was deposited into your joint account after your marriage, making it marital property as well. Everything I said, he had an answer for. Every question I asked, he made sound like Michael was being generous by only taking half." "I need time to think," I said finally. "Of course, but I should mention that if this goes to court, things could get much more complicated and expensive. Your husband would prefer to settle this quietly." I left his office feeling smaller than I had in months. On the street outside, I called Michael. "How did it go?" he asked. I could hear Vanessa laughing in the background. "Your lawyer explained everything," I said. Good. I hope you understand that I'm trying to be fair here, Anna. I could ask for more. That night, Michael came home late again, smelling like Vanessa's perfume. He found me sitting at the kitchen table with the divorce papers spread out in front of me. Have you decided? He asked. I looked up at him. This man I had loved for 5 years. This man I had cooked for and cleaned for and supported through his bad days at work. This man who was now trying to take everything from me? Yes, I said quietly. I'll sign them. Michael's face lit up with surprise and relief. Really? Just like that? Just like that, I said. I don't want to fight anymore, Michael. I'm tired. He actually smiled. I think that's smart, Anna. This way we can both move on with our lives. When do you want me to sign? Tomorrow. James can have everything ready by tomorrow afternoon. Fine, I said, standing up from the table. I'll sign tomorrow. As I walked to our bedroom, I heard Michael on the phone with Vanessa. She's signing, he said, his voice full of excitement. Can you believe it? She's actually just giving up. I told you she would. Vanessa's voice came through the speaker. She's too weak to fight. They were both wrong about that. I wasn't giving up. I was getting ready. While Michael and Vanessa celebrated what they thought was my surrender, I was doing something they never expected. I was investigating. It started small, almost by accident. The day after I agreed to sign the divorce papers, I was working my morning shift at Sunrise Coffee Shop when Mr. Peterson came in for his usual black coffee and blueberry muffin. Mr. Peterson worked at the same marketing company as Michael, but in the accounting department. He was a quiet man in his 50s who always said please and thank you and left good tips. How's your husband doing, Anna? He asked while I made his coffee. I haven't seen him around the office much lately. He's been working on that big Peterson account, I said, remembering what Michael had told me. Mr. Peterson looked confused. Peterson account? There's no Peterson account at our company. Are you sure he said Peterson? My hand froze while pouring his coffee. Maybe I heard wrong, I said quickly. But I knew I hadn't heard wrong. Michael had mentioned the Peterson account dozens of times over the past few months. He had used it to explain why he was working late, why he couldn't come to dinner with my mother, why he was always stressed. If there was no Peterson account, what had Michael really been doing all those nights? That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I used the computer at the coffee shop to look up Michael's company online. I found their client list, their recent projects, their press releases about new accounts. There was no Peterson account anywhere. But there was something else, something that made my stomach drop. Sterling Marketing had recently lost 3 major clients because of accounting irregularities. The company was being investigated for missing money from client accounts. I printed out the articles and took them home, hiding them in my art studio, where Michael never went anymore. The next day, I paid more attention to the customers at the coffee shop. Sunrise Coffee was in the business district, and lots of people from different companies came in every day. I started listening to their conversations, asking casual questions about their work. That's how I met Detective Rodriguez. She was a regular customer who always ordered a large coffee with extra cream and a chocolate croissant. She worked for the financial crimes unit of the police department. We had chatted before about small things. The weather, how busy the coffee shop was, how expensive everything was getting. You look worried about something, she said one morning when I was making her coffee. Just personal stuff, I said. My husband works in marketing, and I've been hearing about companies having money problems. Makes me nervous. What company? She asked. Sterling Marketing. Detective Rodriguez's eyebrows went up. Sterling Marketing? We've been looking into them for months. Someone's been moving money around in ways they shouldn't. My hand started shaking as I handed her the coffee. Really? Can't say much about an ongoing investigation, but let's just say if I worked there, I'd be very careful about my finances right now. That night, I waited until Michael was asleep and then snuck into his home office. I had never looked through his work papers before. I had always respected his privacy, but things were different now. His desk was locked, but I remembered seeing him hide the key in a small box on his bookshelf. Inside the desk, I found folders full of papers I didn't understand. Bank statements, client account numbers, transfer records. But I also found something I did understand. a notebook where Michael had written down passwords and account numbers, and a folder labeled VC, Vanessa Cole. Inside the VC folder were bank statements for an account I had never seen before, an account with both Michael's name and Vanessa's name on it. An account that had received dozens of small deposits over the past 8 months. The deposits were always for strange amounts. $847.33, $1,205.67, $923.45. Never round numbers, never the same amount twice. I took pictures of everything with my phone, being careful to put everything back exactly where I found it. The next morning, I called in sick to work and went to the library. I spent hours researching financial crimes, learning about embezzlement, understanding how people steal money from companies. What Michael was doing was called salami slicing, taking tiny amounts from many different accounts, amounts so small that no one would notice right away. But over time, those tiny amounts added up to thousands of dollars. I also learned that Vanessa wasn't just Michael's girlfriend. According to the bank statements, she was his partner in crime. The account they shared had over $40,000 in it, money that didn't belong to them, money they had stolen from Michael's clients, money they were planning to use to start their new life together after our divorce. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering more evidence. I followed Michael after work one day and watched him meet Vanessa at a fancy restaurant I could never afford. I saw them laughing and holding hands, planning their future with stolen money. I also discovered that they were planning to leave the country. Vanessa had applied for a passport, and Michael had been researching apartments in Costa Rica. They were going to take everything from me, destroy my life, and then disappear to a beach somewhere with money they had stolen. But they had made one big mistake. They thought I was too stupid to figure out what they were doing. They thought I was just a failed artist who would quietly sign their papers and disappear. They had no idea that I was building a case against them that would destroy both of their lives. And they definitely had no idea that I had been documenting everything. The hardest part about gathering evidence against Michael wasn't finding it. It was pretending everything was normal while I collected proof of his crimes. Every morning, I had to kiss his cheek goodbye and wish him a good day, knowing he was stealing money and planning to abandon me. Detective Rodriguez became my secret ally, though she didn't know it at first. I started asking her careful questions during her daily coffee visits, learning about financial investigations without telling her why I wanted to know. How do police catch people who steal money from companies? I asked one morning while making her usual order. Paper trails, she said, stirring cream into her coffee. Criminals always think they're smarter than they are, but money leaves tracks. Bank records, transfer logs, email communications. It all adds up. What if someone was moving small amounts over a long time? That's actually easier to catch than big thefts. Small amounts create patterns, and patterns are like fingerprints. Once you see the pattern, you can prove the crime. I nodded, filing away every word she said. That afternoon, I made a decision that scared me. I was going to hire my own private investigator. I couldn't afford much, but I had been saving money for my coffee shop tips for months, hiding it in a small box in my art studio. It wasn't much money, maybe $800, but it might be enough. I found Tony Marcelli through a customer at the coffee shop. He was a retired police detective who now worked private cases. He was in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes, and he came in every Tuesday for a cappuccino and a newspaper. "Mr. Marcelli," I said one Tuesday morning, "could I talk to you about something private?" He looked up from his newspaper. "What kind of something?" "I think my husband is stealing money from his company, and I think he's planning to divorce me and disappear with his girlfriend." Tony set down his coffee and studied my face. "That's a serious accusation. What makes you think that?" I told him everything. About finding the text messages, about the fake Peterson account, about the bank statements I had photographed. I showed him the pictures on my phone. Tony looked through them carefully, his expression getting more serious with each image. "This is good work," he said finally. "You've got the start of a real case here, but you need more. You need to connect the stolen money directly to your husband, and you need to prove he was planning to use it to leave you. Can you help me? My usual rate is $50 an hour, but I like you, Anna, and I hate cheaters. Let's call it $30 an hour, and we'll see what we can find. Over the next 3 weeks, Tony taught me how to be a real investigator. He showed me how to follow Michael without being seen, how to take pictures that would hold up in court, how to document everything with dates and times. We discovered that Michael had been stealing money for almost a year, not just 8 months. The amounts were getting bigger as he got more confident. In the beginning, he took a few $100s at a time. Now he was taking thousands. We also found out that Vanessa knew everything. She wasn't just his girlfriend, she was helping him plan the thefts. Tony got pictures of them meeting with a man who turned out to be a travel agent, booking flights to Costa Rica for the week after our divorce was supposed to be final. They're not just stealing money. Tony told me one evening as we sat in his car outside the restaurant where Michael and Vanessa were having dinner. They're planning to flee the country. That makes this a federal crime. The worst discovery came when Tony hacked into Michael's email account. I felt guilty about invading his privacy, but Tony reminded me that Michael had already invaded mine by planning to destroy my life. In his emails, we found messages between Michael and his lawyer, James Foster. Messages that made me sick to my stomach. "Make sure we get everything from her," Michael had written. "The inheritance, the paintings, even the furniture. I want her to have nothing when this is over." "Don't worry," Foster had replied. "She's too naive to fight back. We'll clean her out." Good. Vanessa and I want to start fresh, and we'll need money for our new life. They weren't just stealing from Michael's company, they were planning to steal my entire life. But the email that hurt the most was one Michael sent to Vanessa the night I agreed to sign the divorce papers. "She actually thinks I'm being generous," he wrote. "She has no idea that by the time this is over, she'll be broke and homeless while we're living like kings in Costa Rica. Sometimes I can't believe how stupid she is." "She deserves it," Vanessa had replied. "She's pathetic, always trying so hard to make you happy. It's embarrassing. Not much longer now. One more week and we'll be free." Tony printed out every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence we had collected. By the end of 3 weeks, we had a folder 2 inches thick. "This is enough to put them both in prison," Tony said. "Your husband and his girlfriend are going to be very surprised." "What do I do now?" "Now you go to court and watch their world fall apart." I looked at the folder in my hands. 3 weeks ago, I thought my life was over. Now I realized it was just beginning. The morning of the final court hearing, I woke up before my alarm. Michael was already gone. He had left early to meet with his lawyer one last time. I found a note on the kitchen counter that said, "See you in court. Let's get this over with." He had no idea what was waiting for him. I dressed carefully in my best outfit, a simple black dress that my grandmother had given me years ago. It felt right to wear something from her on the day I would protect the inheritance she had left me. At the courthouse, I sat in the same wooden chair as before, but everything felt different now. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't confused or hurt or desperate. I was ready. Michael walked in with James Foster, both of them looking confident and relaxed. Michael wore his most expensive suit and his new watch. He looked like a man who was about to win everything he wanted. Vanessa arrived a few minutes later, wearing a tight dress and high heels. She sat in the back row, smiling at Michael like they were sharing a private joke. She probably thought this was just a formality before they could start their new life together. My mother, Helen, sat behind me, whispering the same words as before. "She only wants money." But this time, I knew she was wrong. Money wasn't what I wanted anymore. I wanted justice. Judge Wells called the court to order and looked at both sides. "Mr. Foster, I believe you have some final paperwork for Mrs. Morrison to sign?" "Yes, Your Honor," Foster said, standing up with his papers. "This is a simple, uncontested divorce. Mrs. Morrison has agreed to all terms." "Mrs. Morrison," Judge Wells said, looking at me. "Is this correct? You agree to the terms as presented?" I stood up slowly. "Actually, Your Honor, I have some new information that changes everything." Michael's confident smile disappeared. Foster looked confused. Vanessa leaned forward in her seat. "What kind of information?" Judge Wells asked. I reached into my purse and pulled out the white envelope I had been carrying for weeks, the envelope that contained everything Tony and I had discovered, everything that would destroy Michael's perfect plan. Evidence of criminal activity, Your Honor. Evidence that my husband has been embezzling money from his company and planning to flee the country with his accomplice. The courtroom went completely silent. Michael's face turned white. Vanessa grabbed the back of the chair in front of her. Your Honor, Foster said quickly, we weren't informed of any new evidence. This is highly irregular. Sit down, Mr. Foster, Judge Wells said firmly. She was already reaching for my envelope. I walked to the front of the courtroom, my heart beating steadily. Each step felt powerful instead of scary. I handed Judge Wells the envelope and returned to my seat. She opened it and began reading. Bank statements showing the stolen money. Photographs of Michael and Vanessa meeting with the travel agent. Email printouts where they planned to steal everything from me. Phone records proving they had been lying about everything. Judge Wells read for several minutes while the courtroom stayed silent. Michael kept looking at the door like he wanted to run. Vanessa's face had gone pale under her makeup. Finally, Judge Wells looked up. Her expression was serious, but there was something that looked almost like satisfaction in her eyes. "Oh," she said, looking directly at Michael. "This changes things." Michael tried to speak, but no words came out. Foster shuffled through his papers like he was looking for something that could save them. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Wells continued, "according to this evidence, you have been systematically stealing money from Sterling Marketing for nearly a year. The total amount appears to be over $60,000. Your Honor, I can explain," Michael started. "You can explain to the police," Judge Wells said. "Miss Cole, I assume you're Vanessa Cole?" Vanessa nodded, looking terrified. "You're also implicated in this evidence. You'll need to speak with the authorities as well." Judge Wells set the papers down and looked at Michael with disgust. "Mr. Morrison, not only will you receive nothing in this divorce, but you'll be facing criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation." She turned to me. "Mrs. Morrison, you'll keep everything, your inheritance, your paintings, your apartment, and your dignity. I'm also ordering Mr. Morrison to pay your legal fees." Michael finally found his voice. "This is impossible. She's just a coffee shop worker." She couldn't have what?" Judge Wells asked. "Outsmarted you?" "Clearly she could and did." 2 police officers entered the courtroom. Detective Rodriguez was one of them. She looked at me and nodded slightly. She had been waiting for this moment too. "Michael Morrison and Vanessa Cole." Detective Rodriguez said, "You're under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud." As they put handcuffs on Michael, he looked at me with shock and anger. "How did you know?" I stood up and looked him in the eyes for the last time. "You taught me something important, Michael. You taught me that people aren't always who they pretend to be. You just never thought I was smart enough to figure out who you really were." Vanessa was crying as they led her away. "This isn't fair. We love each other." "Love built on lies and stolen money isn't love," I said quietly. As they took Michael and Vanessa out of the courtroom, my mother put her arm around me. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Judge Wells smiled at me, a real smile this time. "Good luck, Mrs. Morrison. I have a feeling you're going to do just fine." I walked out of that courthouse a free woman, ready to start the life I deserved.